Well, continuing to follow developments on that massive air tragedy, a Malaysian Airlines flight that was shot down over the Ukraine-Russia border, killing all 298 passengers on board.
The attack has sent shockwaves around the globe as Moscow backed rebels in the Ukrainian military trade charges. There are some fresh reports trickling in. An Air India flight AI-113 was travelling barely 25 kilometers behind MH17 when it was shot down and could have easily been the target. Also lucky was a Singapore Airlines flight that was also some distance away. This, remember, is a busy airspace and countries around the world have been advised to avoid it for the time being.
All right, and it was mostly Dutch nationals on board this ill-fated flight that was brought down, 154 of them in fact. Also on flight were Australians, Malaysians, Indonesians. There were also 6 Britons, 4 Belgian and a Canadian national on board that flight. And it's nothing short of a bizarre twist of fate. Indian origin Malay Sanjit Singh was a flight steward on the Malaysian Airlines flight. He had swapped flights to fly on MH17 that was shot down just 131 days ago. His wife, also a flight stewardess, had swapped out of the flight MH370, which then vanished while en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. So while the wife escaped death, the husband wasn't that lucky. So the Malaysian Airlines passenger jet that crashed in Ukraine last evening near the country's border with Russia killed all 298 people who were on board. Flight MH17 was en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it disappeared from radar screens. The Ukrainian government and pro-Russian separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine immediately blamed each other for this crash. US intelligence agencies have confirmed that the plane was shot down by a surface-to-air missile. Investigations are on even as accusations fly thick and fast. Ukraine claims the plane was shot down by Russian-backed Cossack militants. The charge based on recordings of intercepted phone calls allegedly between Russian military intelligence officers and members of a terrorist group. Well, this is in fact a chilling conversation. Ukraine's intelligence agency says the conversation between a Russian intelligence military officer and a militant will provide key leads into investigations. Here's that audio recording.
Только что сбили самолет, группа минера. За Янакиева упал. Сейчас поехали искать и фотографировать сбитый самолет. Дымится. Сколько минут назад? Ну, 30 минут назад где-то. Майор.
Значит, это Чернухинские сбили самолет. Пилотом с Чернухинского блокпоста. Казаки, что на Чернухина стоят.
Да, майор.
Значит, самолет рассыпался в воздухе в районе шахты Петропавловской. Первый 200-й. Нашли первого 200-го. Была женщина. Да, гражданский. Да, Саш.
Ну что у вас там?
Короче, блин, стопудово гражданский борт. Вот так вот.
Борт какой?
Да я еще пока не разобрался, потому что я не был возле основной части. Я только вот смотрю там, где начали первые тела падать. Там остатки внутренних кронштейнов, кресла, тела.
Понятно.
Вот так.
Вооружение есть что-нибудь?
Вообще ничего. Гражданские вещи, медицинские ошметки, блин, там полотенце такое, туалетная бумага.
Документы есть?
Да, индонезийского студента есть из университета Томпсона.
По самолету, сбитым в районе Снежного Тереза.
Ну?
Это оказался пассажирский. Упал в районе Грабова, там море трупов, женщины, дети. Сейчас казаки там смотрят это все дело. По телевизору передают вроде бы как этот, Ан-26 украинский транспортник. Но, говорят, написано на нем малазийские авиалинии. И что он делал на территории Украины?
Ну, значит, завозили шпионов, их нахуй. Понял? Не хуй летать, блядь, сейчас война идет, блядь.
Obviously, the world is watching reports of a downed passenger jet near the Russia-Ukraine border. And it looks like it may be a terrible tragedy. Right now, we're working to determine whether there were American citizens on board. That is our first priority, and I've directed my national security team to stay in close contact with the Ukrainian government. The United States will offer any assistance we can to help determine what happened and why.
There were 23 US nationals also were believed to be on board that airline. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has called for a full, transparent international investigation into the crash. Well, the UN Security Council is also planning to hold an emergency meeting on the situation prevailing in Ukraine later today.
I regret that despite my repeated urgings and those of many regional and world leaders together, an already dangerous conflict has now escalated even further. In the past 24 hours, there have been a number of incidents involving the death of civilians. There can be no military solution to this conflict.
All right, so the UN clearly seeking an international probe into this tragedy. And in the wake of the reported downing of the Malaysian plane over Ukraine, major airlines have now started avoiding the airspace. The Federal Aviation Administration issued a notice to the pilots of US carriers to avoid these routes.
The list of companies includes Russian Aeroflot, UTAIR and Transaero, German Lufthansa and Turkish Airlines. Following FAA guidelines, all American airlines have also agreed to avoid the airspace over the Russian-Ukraine border. Indian carriers Air India and Jet Airways will avoid the airspace of the war-torn region. Ukraine, following the directive from the DGCA. Air France and Virgin Atlantic too have decided to temporarily reroute flights to bypass Ukraine. Dubai-based Emirates Airline has also turned around its Kyiv-bound flight EK171, which turned to its base station.